In a jaw-dropping twist that's got everyone talking, Meghan Markle is reportedly fuming over a South Park episode that unapologetically drags her through the mud, reimagining her as a character named Maxilla. But this isn't just a celeb getting salty over some jokes. No, this looks more like a full-blown meltdown, one that's pulling back the curtain on how poorly Meghan handles sharp-edged satire, especially when it hits a little too close to home. The episode doesn't hold back. Meghan's portrayed as a wildly over-the-top, toxic version of her public self, a walking parody of her so-called woke image. And while the show's known for going for the jugular, what's stealing the spotlight isn't the roast. It's Meghan's reaction to it. The outrage, only fueling the fire. Instead of brushing it off, she's turned it into a PR disaster that practically screams, they got to her. The more Meghan tries to silence the noise, the louder it gets. Every attempt to censor or steer the conversation just throws a spotlight on what many see as her fragile ego and obsession with image control. And that's exactly what's making this South Park episode blow up. Titled Maxilla, the episode doesn't just poke fun, it goes for total annihilation. Meghan is portrayed as a giant, rampaging monster, tearing through everything in her path. It's not subtle, and it's not just parody. It's a brutal metaphor, suggesting her actions have caused chaos not just within royal circles, but far beyond. Trey Parker and Matt Stone are no strangers to controversy, but this one hits especially hard. Maxilla isn't just another cartoon punchline. It's a full-on reflection of what critics have been saying for years. The monster? Loud, demanding, in your face. Sound familiar? This brutal portrayal has struck a nerve, not just with Meghan, but with a growing number of critics who've long accused her of leaving a trail of chaos in both the royal family and the media world. And here's the kicker. Meghan's attempt to have the episode banned, it doesn't scream protection, it screams entitlement. It's a bold reminder that when you market yourself as a global icon, you're not just selling the glitz and glam, you're also signing up for the backlash, especially when the spotlight turns satirical and unapologetically sharp. The episode doesn't stop at Maxilla's monstrous behavior. It goes after Meghan's carefully curated woke persona, that polished image of activism and social justice. South Park tears it to shreds. They paint her as a disaster in the kitchen, a toxic chef cooking up chaos instead of change. And that metaphor cuts deep. It's not just a dig at her persona, it's a jab at her real-life projects, like the much-hyped but flatlining Netflix cooking show. Critics say it lacked authenticity, and the show's failure only fuels the claim that Meghan's activism is more about optics than outcomes. It's a razor-sharp jab at Meghan's rebranding efforts and the way they've so publicly stumbled. The South Park episode doesn't just mock. It exposes how her activism often feels overly polished, almost rehearsed, more like a performance than a passion. By turning her so-called social justice messaging into a running joke, the satire strips away the credibility she's worked so hard to build. What was meant to inspire now comes off as scripted, strategic, and ultimately hollow. But the real twist? Meghan's reaction. Her reported attempt to shut the episode down didn't just miss the mark. It lit a spotlight on everything the show mocked. In the age of viral culture, trying to censor comedy is like tossing gasoline on a fire. It's guaranteed to explode. Instead of letting the moment pass, she amplified it, making sure millions more tuned in just to see what had her so rattled. And that silence she tried to enforce, it only made her look more insecure, more image-obsessed, and less able to handle even a cartoon critique. This moment shines a harsh light on a double standard that's hard to ignore. Meghan insists on telling her story, her way, with total control. But the moment someone else shares a less flattering take, suddenly it's a crisis. Where others might laugh off a little satire, Meghan's response has only thrown fuel on the fire. Instead of softening the blow, her outrage has energized critics, emboldened comedians, and stirred up a media frenzy she likely wanted to avoid. To many, this feels like just another chapter in a familiar playbook, trying to spin the narrative, manage perception, and silence dissent. It's a strategy that's followed her since her royal debut, and it's starting to wear thin, because the Maxilla episode, it's not just comedy, it's a scalpel, cutting through the polished PR machine, the streaming deals, the victimhood branding, and laying bare a deeper truth. A woman clinging to the spotlight, fueled by entitlement, and quick to explode when things don't go her way. The satire lands because it taps into something real, the growing fatigue with Meghan's constant claims of being misunderstood while demanding center stage. The episode mocks her, yes, but more importantly, it reflects a cultural shift, one where the public is no longer buying the carefully curated victim narrative. And the fact that South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone didn't flinch, that silence from them, it speaks volumes. No one, no matter how famous, polished, or powerful, is above critique. And Meghan Markle, despite every effort to shield herself from it, remains one of the easiest and most legitimate targets for public scrutiny and satire. Her furious response to Maxilla isn't just a tantrum. It's another dramatic scene in what's become an ongoing saga of entitlement, media missteps, and relentless backlash. By trying to pull the plug on the episode, Meghan didn't just fail. She handed her critics expects a victory on a silver platter. This meltdown has only amplified the very image she's been desperate to escape, that of a public figure so tightly wound in her own narrative that any dissent is treated like a personal attack. And in doing so, she's solidified her status as one of the most divisive figures in the modern royal story. If there's any hope of turning the tide, it starts with accepting one hard truth. In the spotlight, satire isn't optional. It's inevitable. You can either take it in stride or let it consume you. As the world watches Meghan spiral over Maxilla, one thing's clear. The harder she fights it, the deeper she sinks into the PR nightmare she just can't seem to shake. The South Park episode isn't just a punchline, it's a full-blown reckoning. It peels back the polished layers of Meghan's public persona to reveal the cracks, contradictions, and the carefully masked chaos underneath. And while the jokes land hard, it's Meghan's fiery attempt to get the episode banned that truly exposes the deeper issue, a relentless obsession with control and a striking lack of self-awareness. One of the most cutting truths the satire lays bare is her toxic tango with the media. Meghan has spent years painting the press as the villain, yet she's consistently at the center of media storms, often sparked by leaks, lawsuits, and headline-hungry interviews. The episode calls this out with brutal clarity, portraying her not just as a victim, but also as the architect of her own chaos. It's the ultimate contradiction, condemning the media while using it as a weapon. This cycle, play the victim, then stir controversy, might have earned sympathy once, but now it's becoming a credibility killer. Instead of gaining support, the strategy is alienating people. The more it plays out, the more Meghan risks being seen not as misunderstood, but as calculated and self-serving. South Park nails the paradox that defines Meghan's public image, calling out the clash between her desire for privacy and her constant presence in the spotlight. It's this sharp contrast that makes the satire land so effectively, and why it's resonating with so many viewers. The episode doesn't just poke fun, it zooms in on Meghan's increasingly theatrical persona. From the tearful, headline-grabbing Oprah interview to her flawlessly staged media appearances, she often feels less like a real person and more like a carefully scripted character. Maxilla, her cartoon counterpart, stomps around in full-blown diva mode, raging, demanding, and absolutely convinced of her own importance. The exaggerated tantrums? For many critics, they aren't even that far off. They see Meghan's public behavior as calculated, choreographed, and fueled more by optics than authenticity. By leaning into this caricature, South Park delivers a stinging commentary on how Meghan's efforts to redefine herself outside the royal bubble have, ironically, made her appear even more detached from reality. The show's brutal honesty pulls back the curtain on a woman caught between the fantasy of royalty and the unforgiving spotlight of celebrity culture. No crown, no filter, and nowhere to hide. Another major blow the episode delivers, it zeroes in on Meghan's failure to form real, lasting connections, especially with the royal family. The Maxilla character's path of destruction isn't just for laughs. It symbolizes how Meghan's presence, according to critics, has left broken relationships, fractured trust, and lasting damage within the monarchy. Reports of behind-the-scenes tension, clashes with senior royals, and staff walkouts only reinforce what South Park illustrates in cartoon chaos, a relentless push for control that ends up isolating her even further. The monster imagery, it's not just hyperbole, it's a metaphor for the consequences of her actions. Every move aimed at domination seems to come at the cost of loyalty, respect, and genuine human connection. And perhaps most powerfully, the refusal of Trey Parker and Matt Stone to censor or soften their message sends a clear signal in today's climate. While Meghan often aligns herself with tightly managed narratives and progressive ideals, South Park stands as a bold counterpunch, defending satire as a necessary check on public power and privilege. By holding their ground, the creators push back against the rising tide of celebrity censorship and carefully controlled messaging. In doing so, they remind us that in a world obsessed with image, sometimes the loudest truth comes from a cartoon that isn't afraid to mock the mighty. This defiant stand by South Park strikes at the heart of Meghan's ongoing effort to reshape her public narrative. Instead of bending to her demands, the show reasserts a fundamental truth. No one, not even a duchess, gets a pass from public scrutiny, especially when that scrutiny reflects widely held perceptions and documented behavior. Meghan's frantic push to bury the Maxilla episode has backfired spectacularly. Rather than protecting her image, it's amplified the very traits the satire mocks: entitlement, control, and a recurring victim complex that now feels more like a brand than a reality. What's most damning isn't the cartoon, it's how accurate it feels to so many people watching. The episode isn't just comedy, it's a cultural gut check, a mirror Meghan can't seem to look into without flinching. And unless she's willing to face that reflection head-on, her public standing will only continue to erode. As her PR nightmare grows, Maxilla becomes more than a cartoon villain. It becomes a symbol, a warning sign that the cracks in Meghan's carefully constructed persona are widening. The outrage over a satirical sketch? It's revealing something much deeper. chamber, a celebrity spiraling into paranoia over perception, desperately trying to control a narrative that's already slipped out of her hands. This isn't just a cartoon controversy, it's the unraveling of a meticulously managed public image. Meghan's demand to have the South Park episode pulled doesn't just reflect outrage, it signals a deep refusal to face criticism or take accountability. Rather than pausing to reflect on the pointed commentary, Meghan leans into the same playbook, attempting to silence, suppress, and spin. But this time, the tactic backfires hard, widening the gap between her and a public already skeptical of her authenticity. This kind of reaction only fuels the growing perception that Meghan isn't just thin-skinned. She's actively intolerant of dissent. From lawsuits to media blackouts, her past attempts at controlling the narrative have consistently ended the same way: more backlash, more ridicule, and less trust. And now, the viral success of the Maxilla episode proves a critical point. When you try to censor criticism, you don't erase it, you amplify it. Meghan's response didn't bury the satire, it gave it a megaphone. Meghan's reaction doesn't project strength, it exposes vulnerability. It raises a serious question. If she can't handle satire, how can she navigate the brutal realities of public life outside palace walls? South Park doesn't just mock, it captures a shift in public sentiment. The fatigue with Meghan's self-styled role as a moral compass and activist is real, and the episode hammers that home by depicting her as both a toxic chef and a destructive force. That imagery isn't random. It reflects growing doubts about her authenticity and intentions. Whether it's staff accusations of bullying or her constantly shifting public statements, the controversies have piled up, and the satire simply ties them all together in a way that's both biting and brutally effective. This kind of exposure is devastating for someone trying to rebrand as a global humanitarian. Rather than elevating her image, Maxilla drags it back into the spotlight, and not in the way she wants. It undercuts her efforts to become a universally beloved figure, and instead paints a picture of someone who's lost control of her own narrative. Instead of silencing the noise, the cartoon has ignited a firestorm, one that's burning through what's left of Meghan Markle's carefully managed credibility. The Maxilla episode didn't just go viral, it detonated a public backlash that she's now powerless to contain. At the heart of it is a woman visibly trapped by her own contradictions, desperate to control a narrative that's no longer hers to command. Her fury over the satire doesn't show strength or conviction. It reveals how fragile her public persona truly is. This isn't just another PR misstep, it's a full-blown unraveling, a catastrophic moment that could signal the collapse of the Meghan Markle brand as we've known it. Polished, curated, untouchable. The Maxilla controversy stripped away the glamour and left behind a portrait of someone out of step with reality, unable or unwilling to engage with criticism in any meaningful way. And in trying to censor a cartoon, she confirmed exactly what it was mocked. When satire cuts this deep and the only response is outrage, it's not comedy that's the problem. It's the target's inability to face the truth. The Maxilla episode may be wrapped in animation and exaggeration, but its impact is very real. It's exposed the unraveling of Meghan Markle's public image, spotlighting a pattern of self-inflicted controversies, performative outrage, and a desperate need to control every narrative. And the harder she tries to fight it, the clearer the message becomes. The public and the media are no longer buying the act. Meghan's furious reaction hasn't silenced the critics, it's rallied them. And as this backlash continues to grow, it raises a serious question about what's next for someone whose brand is now more punchline than platform. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't just about a cartoon. It's about a cultural shift, a reckoning, and a public figure under fire like never before. Let us know what you think. Did South Park go too far, or did it just say what everyone's been thinking? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're into real talk and sharp breakdowns, consider subscribing. We've got a lot more to unpack.